All right, welcome back. Welcome back to the podcast. Welcome back to Tomboy Official. I'm glad to be on here on a Sunday. It's been a split second, but I don't know exactly how long. It's just been a little bit of time. So I'm a little vaped up. I'm vaping this hybrid. Let me see. The sativa was Fruity Pebbles by Gelato, and I think this hybrid is a White Widow strain by Gelato. I couldn't find much about White Widow outside of their brand, so I don't know if it's like something they made or if it's just kind of more rare or hard to find. But anyways, you know, if you vape responsibly. I just like to listen to music, get my vape on, get the creative juices flowing. The only thing is, it slows down my mind. It slows down my memory. It kind of makes me a bit tangential, but it does kind of help me get into a creative space. So that's kind of it's one of those catch-22s. But yeah, today I wanted to talk about some topics that I believe I've spoken about them before, but wanted to kind of bring them up as a more kind of up-to-date conversation about coming out, about baby gays, about millennials, Gen Z. Like, I'll be honest, I don't know a lot of Gen Zers outside of my like if I have like friends or family members who have kids that are a bit younger than I am, younger than my sister even, because my sister's like 30 or gonna be 30 this in May this year. But yeah, I don't really know that many Gen Zers. I would if I was still like quite involved in a church, but the church where I do still have a membership, I don't really attend. So I'm kind of like secondhand connected because my mom and dad are very connected with this church that I grew up in, and then a lot of the kids that I used to work at the school, it was a school attached to the, well, not physically attached to the church, but it was like of the same religious denomination. So yeah, it had people who were of that of the Gen Z crowd. And then on a professional level, I have some clients that are kind of younger, but I don't really like firsthand interact with that many people. Yeah, just not firsthand, but secondhand, yeah, and a little bit firsthand, but not really on a level where it's like I'm hanging on a regular basis. We don't like make plans or anything. It's just kind of generationally, because like I'm kind of like on the elder millennial side, so I feel like there's kind of certain age ranges that I just don't tend to just like hang out with. I mean, and the main barrier that would usually break that down for me was like church. Because when I was very active in church, there were a lot of people of a lot of different ages, and so it was like you would kind of come across, at least I would come across people of all kind of ages, and then you'd kind of be like in the same social space. So like there would be like younger kids that would like know me from like where I worked, or like their friends would know me because they would introduce, or like maybe they were a little younger than my sister, so they would hang out with my sister, and then they would like still kind of maybe come around the house and like my parents' house and stuff, and so I'd see them around and stuff. But yeah, there's nobody really that's too much younger than my sister that I really interact with too much anymore. Um, and I find that kind of unfortunate. It's just kind of one of those things like the Rona kind of got me a little disconnected um, from society. So unless it's somebody coming across my desk for work or somebody who I'm directly making plans with and then like secondhand interacting with their family um, or their social circle, I'm usually not interacting with people of that age range. But I like I like um, just for the most part, I really do like um, the content created by a lot of the Gen Zers, especially like TikTok content. I mean, some of the YouTube, but I feel like they're way more active on TikTok. You guys let me know. You guys seem real active on TikTok, and maybe it's just what I'm coming across, but that's where I see the most Gen Zers, honestly. And I know that, social media isn't the most accurate representation because, people are, in a way, kind of like pushing what the algorithm seeks to, um, what the algorithm seeks to promote. And so, if people are doing it for hobby work, ratings purposes, and viewer purposes and trying to get more viewers, more subscribers, things like this, I've I'm doubting that they're really gonna go too far into like waiting, like they're not gonna wait too long, um, posting stuff that people don't really want to see or stuff that the algorithm isn't really pushing. And so I think that that's where I feel like the accuracy is not 100% because it's like, you know, a lot of times when we're posting content, it's like content not only that maybe viewers want to see, but content that is gonna um, put you, market you to like a target audience. Versus if you know that there's stuff that just never gets viewed or seen or pushed at all, then it's like, why really record it? Even if that is genuinely like something that is an aspect of your life. But I do kind of notice that too with like millennials and um, I don't know that many people who are older than millennials that are like posting stuff. Um, I just don't know too many people older than millennials that are like posting a lot. Um, it tends to be like millennials and younger, but yeah, there are older people too. But um, I feel like that those our two generations are like the main ones. But okay, so how so when it comes to like baby gays coming out, um, and maybe like the evolution of your of your either like sexuality or gender identity, um, there's a lot. There's a lot, guys. Now I know a lot of times we focus on the negative, um, because that is something that a lot of people come across. And I mean, while it's accurate, I hesitate to record another stressful or another episode that's like stressors related to coming out and things. Like we all kind of know those stressors, and I think you can find so much content about the stressors. Um, I mean, I would like to talk more about the culture of coming out and just kind of what it's like to be between multiple cultures, right? Now, I try, I mean, I don't know, I try, the reason why I say I try not to talk too much about church and religion and things like that is because I'm not here to push church and religion and things like that, but because for myself, because I did grow up and was early socialized around so many church and religious family and um people that I was socialized around before I was independent, as in like my junior year of high school, my senior year of high school, community college, universities, all the universities. um like those were when I started interacting more with people who weren't necessarily from the church, and through sports leagues as well, but it's like the sports leagues I was mostly involved with were through the church. Um so I wasn't really too um like like I've mentioned, my church related experiences, I'm never going to tell people like, hey, you need to be this religion or follow this thing or do this ritual or have these traditions or be spiritual or be religious or whatever. Like if you're not, you're not. If you're not interested, you're not interested. But I just want people to know, like, when I'm bringing it up, I'm not going to start like preaching about like any kind of thing. Like what I do, what I believe, I don't really talk about it too much, and I don't really care if people really know what I do or not. Like if people are in my regular life where you see me on a regular basis and we're friends and stuff, you'll probably know what I do or don't do. But if you aren't there, then you probably don't really know. So I feel like it's not really the direction I usually want to go in a podcast, because I know, even as a person who grew up in those environments, like sometimes even when I just hear people talking about like church or like something related to like church or religion, I'm like, I don't want to listen to this anymore. And so I just want you to know I'm not trying to like go to a direction of like, okay, after I mention anything about religion or church or whatever, I'm gonna start telling people what I think they should do or whatever. And it can be triggering. Like I've gone through periods of time in my life where it's like, if I heard anybody say anything about church, or if it was a trailer about church and LGBT topics, or like any kind of religion and like LGBT topics, I would usually just like stay away from it and not watch it, not watch the movie, not watch the episodes, not watch the videos. Um, I think there was an episode of um, not Real Housewives, the Real L Word, but it was like a reality show, not the younger one, not the younger Real L Word where they were in like New York and LA, and like not that one. There was one in like Georgia or somewhere like that. Um I think, I don't know if it was Georgia, but it was somewhere in like the Bible Belt, and that one I was like, man, I barely watched like any of it before the point like I barely watched any of it before the point where I started just being like not interested um in like viewing anymore, because it was just a lot. I was just like, I don't want to listen to this, I don't want to watch this, like I've had my own experiences or fears of my own experiences that could potentially end up like things that people would have been mentioning. So I was like, I don't want to listen to this. But yeah, like, I mean, so I understand, and I know a lot of people, friends, other like family members even that I know, um, that just um, were just not um, friends that were just not um, treated well. People I've even dated that had some really harsh family members after they came out and stuff, and it was mostly based on the religious views and stuff like that. But I mean, we kind of know that exists, and it is kind of a hard space to navigate, especially if you're very socialized. And I think growing up in Southern California was a very different experience, because outside of the church world, everything else is like so secular, so like, just how, I don't know if you guys have been to LA, if you've been to Hollywood, I mean, it's like that's not necessarily known for like church environment. Um, like the Bible Belt is known for like, religious views like being kind of pushed in the city and stuff like that, and like people in those cities and those towns being like very like, even if like they might not all be religious, but like they're surrounded by a lot of like religious culture versus LA. That's not like LA is surrounded by so much different type of culture of all different types. I would say entertainment is a big part of the culture in LA. Not just movies and Hollywood and TV shows. Yes, there's that. A lot of the filming goes on there. A lot of the producing goes on there. A lot of the writers are out there. A lot of like YouTube content creators are out there. A lot of people are out there, and so that's not uncommon. Um, and then there's also the other entertainment factors, sports, the arts, a lot of like plays and writers, people who write scripts, actors, musicians, recording studios, universities. Like there's just so much out there that's just, there's venues for all sorts of stuff, painting galleries and all kinds of artistic things. And so it's a very creative environment, but it isn't necessarily creative towards like church culture, but it's very creative towards like the LGBT culture. But one thing that I find interesting in media is that, and it doesn't just happen with like LGBT culture. This is with like all cultures. Um, there's a difference between people who are of a subculture group that create the content about their own culture and their own life, and there's content by people who aren't of that group that create storylines about that culture, to appeal to that culture, or you know talk about that culture or whatever it may be, right? So we see that a lot. Like, um, let me see. Spoiler for the next 30 seconds, okay? So if you ever saw Chucky, the new series of Chucky, um, basically there's a lot of themes of like bullying and LGBT youth. So this person still lived with his parents, family, and wasn't independent, as in working or able to move out. So that's a spoiler enough. But yeah. All right. So that spoiler's over. But yeah, it's kind of an example that it's like a common theme that you often see in LGBT movies is that the movies aren't necessarily for us by us. They're written for us or for the general population as like, oh, this is a hot topic now, or this is something that's trendy, or this is something that people are talking about, that there's still a lot of space to write different stories. But then you kind of tend to see the same storyline. So the reason why I'm mentioning all that is because, when we talk about coming out and, you know, um, like I do want to talk about LGBT culture, but when we talk about coming out, a lot of it is from like a straight world perspective. And I find that interesting because, sorry, I'm taking off my jacket, so I hope there's not too much rustling around. I find it interesting that we tend to have majority culture, you know, giving their version of a representation of a minority culture. We see this with a lot of different cultures, with black cultures, with Latino cultures, with all sorts of cultures, Asian cultures. Like you see a lot of times that there's like, maybe Caucasian writers, American Western Caucasian writers writing about these people's lives. And I'm not saying that they can't do it. Just like, you can have an African American history class that's taught by an Asian person or by a white person or like whatever. You don't have to be the race to do the thing. You can major in, whatever language you want or whatever cultural studies you want and not necessarily have to be from that culture. But if you don't look like someone from a certain culture, if you're not identified by the masses as someone from a specific culture, or subculture or whatever you want to say, then that experience is going to be different than somebody who is actually easily identified or easily assumed to be of that culture. Like, for example, I've had friends that like um like I'm trying to see which example I was going to go by. Like, I've had friends that are like of either like a socioeconomic status or a certain race or certain something, and they don't necessarily look stereotypically like people would assume. So you hear somebody talk crap about that group. Like, I've had friends that were like homeless and they would still like, they'd come out, hang out, and then like maybe if somebody didn't know them, they would start like, oh, like I hate it when I have to give homeless people money and all this kind of stuff. And little do they know that the person who's sitting right next to them is literally a homeless person. I mean, they might not look like it. I have Asian friends, that some of them don't really necessarily look Asian. Some of them do. Um, and I'm currently at a job where I'm mostly on the phones. We're still remote, and I haven't met the majority of my clients, so a lot of them don't know my race, and so it's kind of interesting. I've never worked like this, where it's like I'm noticing I get a lot more access to a lot of things than before, and I'm not sure if it's because of the climate of, the pandemic, or if it's because my race is kind of shielded from general knowledge, and because of how my voice is, you can't necessarily tell. Like, I don't have like a specific type of accent necessarily, or a specific type of like way of like, phrasing the things I'm gonna say. I mean, and people often tell me that they think I'm white, which I'm not, but I get that a lot from a lot of people. But just things like that, like, you get a kind of different perspective when people do or don't think that you're from a certain cultural background. And so even if you are like like writing movies or writing scripts or writing entertainment for a group that you're not a part of, you can have some of an understanding, but it's like, if you're not being treated like the same group is, then it's not really going to be the same experience. You might have I think some people have more experience than others. Like, I have friends that grew up in neighborhoods with people, like a lot of people who were more my race, more than I did, like, I didn't necessarily grow up in a neighborhood where everyone was necessarily my race or even the majority of the people. And I have friends who did that aren't even the same race as me. So, it's kind of an interesting, like, I do connect with them very well, and I feel like they really get me, but at the same time, it's like, we still have had different experiences. Everyone has different experiences, and I'm not here to like label it and say, oh, it's good or it's bad, but I mean, when it comes to entertainment, which a lot of us early on, when we're, either baby gays or like coming out, a lot of the stages, do kind of come across, like introducing yourself to, the gay culture, or the, you know, um, any kind of gender related topics, in the culture, and you might relate to it, you might not. You might relate to what's presented and what's easy to find, or you might have to go out of your way to look for stuff. Um, but there is kind of that like stereotypical Hollywood, coming out story where it's from the straight perspective of like, you know, not saying that there's nothing accurate to it, because there is a lot of accuracy too, but it's like very nuanced stuff where it's like, okay, um, you have, um, you know, someone who is trying to come out and, a lot of times it's kind of a sensitive time for people, and people are kind of like in a vulnerable stage, especially if you don't know a lot about anything. You're going to be kind of in a vulnerable state, especially if you haven't really researched out kind of what things look like, what things could look like. But then there's really no way to 100% predict what's actually going to happen. But you can kind of like gauge like your safety levels, your comfort levels. Like some environments you literally can't come out because it's going to be so unsafe for you. You might have prejudiced teachers that like pick on you or like fail you in classes or grade you more harshly. You might have, like, if you're at a church or something, you might have people that like exclude you from stuff or like make you feel bad about how you are. If you're just in a general like ethnic type of culture, you might have people who just totally disregard, how you feel and still try to like set you up on dates or expect you to kind of like go out with certain people or like follow the traditional rules, even if you like explicitly tell them like, hey, like I'm gay and I don't really like this gender and I have different gender preferences, and like I like to dress this other certain way, and this is kind of how I'm comfortable going through the world. You might have people in your life that completely just ignore that. And if you're not in an independent space, that's kind of like, overall, I think that's one major takeaway, is that there's a difference between when you're able to be independent. And I'm not saying everybody has to move out of their cultural, areas or out of their like family housing or anything like that. Because I know there are a lot of cultures where people stay at home past 18, stay at home past whatever age, might stay home till you're married, might, the different ages of moving out aren't necessarily like the American way that a lot of people are taught that they're going to move, the like white Caucasian American way, Western culture way. I mean, independence is, not necessarily always like desired or something that people like really need. Like, but I feel that independence, when you have prejudice involved in a part of your culture, independence helps you. Because if you can get independent from that, you can basically find jobs, find housing, find a place to move and live where you feel safe, where you feel comfortable, where you can create community, where you can kind of be with people that understand you, where you feel safe, where you can like express yourself and date and like meet people and do all kinds of stuff. But yeah, like, I mean, you don't have to do it that way, but I don't know of like an easier way. That's kind of like the easiest way. Even if you're young, um, you might have to wait a while, but I mean, if you can find safe spaces first, and make sure that they're like legitimately safe, then at least you have like some kind of backup, versus like if you have nothing and then, going around and like coming out, or somebody pulls you out of the closet, like, which I think is a form of harassment, but that's just my own opinion, but I consider it harassment, honestly. Um, it's like, it's almost like, well, it's not even the same thing, but like, if you were in like a bathroom stall and you're like clearly using the bathroom and somebody forced you, like if they just like kicked open the door and like forced you to come out of the bathroom into the hallway where there's a bunch of people, that's kind of like the same thing. Like, you would be like, that's harassment. Like, you can't just pull people out of some place without their clothes on and like they're in the middle of using the toilet and stuff. Like, that's just ridiculous. Like, nobody would be like, oh yeah, that's socially okay. It's not. And I kind of would almost equate like pulling somebody out of the closet like that. It's kind of like that's their own private details. Nobody else has the right to be just like, hey, you're gonna like, let me just give you a nudge or like push you over here or like spread this information to everybody. I don't think that's okay. But people do it, but I still don't think it's okay. But I think, so I don't know which of these topics I really want to talk about first. Um, but yeah, the baby gay topic. Baby gays are basically not necessarily based on age, but a baby gay is somebody who is maybe not as experienced, or not as well versed or fluent in LGBT culture, or with their gender culture. They're still kind of learning the ropes, um, and they might still need some form of guidance or some form of direction, and they're still kind of like developing their own sense of themselves. Sorry if you hear me kind of straining, it's because I'm trying to stretch my back. I've got this really bad back pain. I slept really weird, and you guys know how my back is. I'm like old now, so I always get back aches. It's so annoying. But I'm trying to like stretch my back a little bit so it feels a little bit better. I thought laying down would actually help me earlier today, but I don't think it helped. I think it actually just tightened up my back. But I'm worried about overstretching too. Alright. But yeah, anyways. Yeah, so there's nothing wrong with being a baby gay. It's kind of like a cute term that people just kind of started using. I don't really know if there's like a really serious origin to it. Maybe there is, then I just don't know. But I mean, it's mostly overall just somebody who's kind of like newer to the community, or doesn't really involve themselves in the community, and maybe usually it implies that they want to, that they're starting to. Like, usually you would, I don't know, I mean, closeted sounds kind of like judgmental, but I would say someone is maybe more in the closet if they're not ready or wanting to necessarily experience that part of their culture, that part of their identity, and that part of themselves. They're kind of more like not ready yet, versus someone who is ready but they just don't know a lot. I think that's what a baby gay is someone who's like, okay, like I'm kind of ready to be out there, at least somewhat, a little bit, on some level. But there are different levels. And none is like better than or worse than the others, but so if you want to, if a person wants to come out, usually something that a lot of people might not know, and maybe they do because people talk about it a lot now, but something that people might not know is that, coming out isn't necessarily like one time. I mean, unless, I think I've said this before, but it's like, unless you've literally gone to a space where you've mentioned it in a way that everyone who comes across you, like LinkedIn, and then like your email, putting your pronouns and all your identities on there, or like, if it comes up every text or I don't know, if there's something that comes up every time somebody's in contact with you where they know, then maybe there's not like a lot of coming out. But usually, say you move to a new town, or you meet a new person, or you meet some new friends, or you meet, you join a new group, or you do, like there's a lot of times where you're just joining a bunch of different stuff, learning, meeting a lot of new people, and they're not always going to know your sexuality or your gender identity. They're not always going to know those things. Even if it is like LGBT people or whatever, like they're not always going to know how you specifically identify. And so that is good to know. Kind of, that when you're when you're coming out, a lot of people, you know, like when you see it in like movies, it's always like coming out and then the family finds out, and then, or like the school or the best friend finds out. And usually in movies too, they tend to be a lot younger. I've noticed, like middle school age, maybe high school age. Um, Once people are in college, you don't see a whole lot of movies about coming out. Once people are in the working world and outside of college and more independent, you see even less about them coming out. Unless it's like old movies, like movies from like the 40s or the 50s, or like time periods like really long ago where it was like 60, 70 years ago or something, like um, before a lot of our times. um, so I think that is one thing that that's good to know. It's good for people to know. Um, and culturally, one thing that I've noticed as far as like availability of maybe like information, media, not only about like straight writers, cis straight writers writing our stories, but you know, other topics I've noticed, such as um um what was I gonna say? Shoot, sorry. Other topics I've noticed, um outside of cis straight people writing LGBT stories or different gender identity stories, um we also have this kind of cultural view of things, that there is still the minority culture within the minority culture. And so, for example, I mean, this is just an example. There aren't that many like younger age gay male rappers that are LGBT. Lil Nas X, Montero, he's probably the only one that I can think of right now that's like totally mainstream with a bunch of hits that nobody would say that he's not mainstream. Um, I mean, there are others that I don't really know their names necessarily, but I mean, I listen to a lot of like LGBT artists on YouTube. They have a lot of YouTubers who are maybe um, not high key. I don't know if high key is the word, but there aren't really that many male, like cis male, um, musicians that are out in general. Um, Now, I don't want to exclude bisexual males, because I would say there are more bisexual males in um, maybe like music entertainment, but I still don't know of a lot of like rappers. Like, I think there's the singer in 112. I don't know if these are even rumors. And then the one guy in Boys to Men. But those are like R&B groups, and I don't know. I don't even know that 100% sure. I just heard people saying that they're gay, and like, how would I know? You know, like, I've never heard them specifically say, "Oh yeah, I'm gay," and I've never like looked into interviews about it. Now, Lil Nas X, he's gay. He talks about it. He talks about it in interviews. He talks about it with other people. Um, he talks about it in his music sometimes. Like, he definitely, the videos, depending which ones you've seen, they're very sexual, some of them. Um, and you know, he's a professional artist, rapper, singer, songwriter, country pop musician. I don't know how to describe it, but he's got a lot of genres that he does, and he's a black male, I believe from Georgia, and I don't know any other black American males that are like mainstream LGBT guys right now. Um, I mean, there is RuPaul, um, who does drag, but RuPaul is older, um, and I think my mom was the one who told me that RuPaul was a drag queen. Um, like I don't know if she said I don't know if she said drag queen or if she said transvestite. I can't remember what she used. But I used to watch a lot of music videos when I was growing up, like when I was up in LA, we would, my parents would drive us to school because it was so far and well, there was traffic. Yeah, distance and all that. Like so we would get dressed in the morning and like after we ate breakfast and stuff, we'd be getting dressed and like listening to, MTV countdowns or BET countdowns or whichever countdowns we chose to listen to because they used to have music video countdowns. And I remember RuPaul had a music video when I was younger that got really popular. And I remember really liking the song and it was really popular. So it was on like multiple, they would do like the hits. And so it was on multiple mornings for a certain time period where it's like you can see who's like I guess it was like numbers 5 through 1 or something. But yeah, I grew up listening to those kind of like hit lists like every morning, almost every morning. Um, just kind of something in the background. And then yeah, we would just like get our stuff prepared for school and then like leave once that. And it kind of gave us a kind of a you kind of knew what time of the day it was because of the countdown. Like once it was over, we had a few minutes to like get the stuff in the car and it was about time to start leaving by then. And so yeah, once it got to the first number one hit, we kind of knew what was number one. But yeah, we that was probably one of my first introductions was RuPaul. I don't think I knew that RuPaul wasn't a cis woman. Um, until my mom mentioned it. I didn't have any problems with it. I thought it was cool, but I never really thought anything of it. Um, and then I remember, um, what was I saying? Sorry. Yeah, like just in general, um, the things you'll come across when you're coming out, if you're looking for like stuff in the media, is you yes, there is representation, but depending on what you're looking for, there's not really a lot of representation. So in sports, for example, take basketball for example. There's not a lot of like male representation in basketball, football, baseball. I mean, I'm sure there are some LGBT athletes, but there aren't a lot that get recognized versus women's sports. You have some of the U.S. soccer team, some of the WNBA. There's queer people. On the female side, a lot more out openly out in sports than I would say males. Actors like with acting. I feel like with acting, it's a little maybe. I don't really know if it's maybe a little equal. It might be. And I do watch a lot of movies and stuff. I don't watch a lot of shows, but I do watch a lot of movies. Um, and then I would say, yeah, with males, what I see, I'm just going by what I know. But and what I kind of see, and I do watch a wide range. I participate a wide range in like entertainment. But I don't really know like everything on the face of the planet, so I could be wrong. But just what comes to my attention from like what I view, definitely like in the rap space, you don't really see hip hop musicians that are um bisexual, transgender. You don't really see a lot of this, a lot of representation with these groups. Um, just the representation isn't always there. If you're talking like adult entertainment, and if you're not 18, maybe don't hear this part, but um, if you're if you don't, I mean, if you do look at more like adult entertainment spaces, You definitely see the stereotypical people. You see a lot of Caucasian people. And usually when you see minority groups, it tends to be fetishized. Not always, but it is often fetishized. Like, so for example, um, if you watch just general, just classic cis straight people porn, which I don't think I've ever really watched that, like, honestly. But I mean, if you see it, I mean, I've seen it. Like, I know of it. I know what exists out there because it's just there's pop-ups all over the place. Like, there's no way you can really avoid it. If you're going for it, you're gonna see it. But there's definitely the gender roles. There's definitely a lot of the movies and things are kind of more geared towards like what men might want to see. Um and it's interesting. Like, I think the first kind of like um I don't know if you'd even call it porn or what, but like the first kind of things I remember watching were like, or finding an attraction of some form towards, were with gay people, like gay guys. And I always just thought, because I wasn't really like out or like knew anything about my identity at all, because people were always telling me what my identity was. So I just thought maybe I'm just not doing it. Maybe I'm just not comfortable yet because I'm like too young. Maybe I'm just like immature and too young and like not developing quickly enough at everyone else's rate. That's literally what I thought. I was like, well, maybe I just don't like this stuff because I'm not like, I'm still kind of younger. I'm maybe like 20 or whatever, and maybe it'll take longer. Maybe I'll start liking dresses when I go to college. Maybe I'll start, like, that was kind of my mindset. Like, I always thought I was either young or like there was going to be some part of like puberty or my development that would just like push my mind and body into like liking certain things. Just I would wake up and this would just be how my life is now, like that's kind of what I had assumed, because everyone around me was like church people telling me like, oh, you're straight, or oh, you're just a tomboy, you're just, like you'll figure it out when you get older, like whatever, and like, surprise. Now on this side of the coin, I figured it out, that's for sure, but I didn't necessarily figure it out in the way that people were telling me I was going to figure it out. I figured it out in a way that is more authentically my own self, and in a way that really sums up a lot of the things I was experiencing. And so, yeah, but yeah, like, even though there is gay representation out there is like genderqueer representation out there, you don't necessarily see certain pockets of groups of people. Like, I think in LA, probably in San Francisco too. So San Francisco, I think, was the first place where I saw go-go dancers that were like trans female dancers. And I think LA is the only place that I know of, other than, I think there's a place in New York too, but and just a couple dancers that are like go-go dancers that are, kind of more masculine presenting lesbians, or however they identify. They're more masculine presenting women. But I mean, there's not a lot. Like, when you look to even like purchase, if you're purchasing videos and stuff, you probably find more diversity on like OnlyFans, honestly. OnlyFans probably has the most diversity of specific like niche stuff that you might be looking for. Just, you'd probably have to find the content creators. I don't know if on OnlyFans you can like search by topic. I don't really know that. And I've only noticed like certain brands like I mean, I don't know like every single brand out there, but like Helix Studios, they don't have a lot of black gay guys. It's usually Caucasian guys, and then they do have some Latino guys, and they've been like having some Spanish language guys in there from like in different like top like theme topics about like different sports like soccer or whatever like I mean I didn't mean to say it with that kind of tone, like I'm just saying that's just kind of how like just it just happens to be soccer with the Latino ones. And like um I mean I love soccer. Trust me, I love it. But yeah, that's kind of how it looks. And then I probably talked about this before. I probably talk about the same ones all the time because I don't really like branch out to new stuff. If I find something I like, that's what I like. That's what I know. I followed Davey Wavy on YouTube for a while. He was probably the first gay YouTuber I followed, and he has Humoros. I think it's Humoros.tv or something like that, and it's male erotica adult porn. It's porn basically, but yeah, it's kind of like artsy, a little bit on the artsy side. He recently started incorporating a few more Black and African American artists, but that I don't think that was happening up until like this last like maybe year or so. And then there was this other Pink and White. So they're very like inclusive as far as um like the different I don't know if it's like yeah, like different like minority groups, people sizes. So they do have like plus size people, they have trans people. I've mentioned these things before, and like even when you see like a lot of like adult videos with trans people, it tends to be trans females with the that were born with, you know, like male genitalia, and you know have their male genitalia, and that tends to be what you see. You don't really tend to see a lot of trans females in pornography. I mean trans males in pornography. Like they exist, but I mean there aren't like a whole lot. Like if you just did like a general Google search, it wouldn't be like the first of things that pops up. Like you would have to search or know where to search or know which companies had those types of artists or entertainers, and then you would go from there. So um that's some of the stuff I kind of notice is that um you just don't always have the representation there, even though there is more representation maybe than before, and there's representation where you're seeing a lot more stuff in the mainstream than you did before. It's still not like everybody being represented. There's certain groups of people that aren't really very represented, and I think the reason why is because it's either not a safe space for them or the algorithms aren't pushing it. Like I wonder often what females who are interested in like masculine presenting females, there's not that much out there for them, for us, or like androgynous people, or you know, like there's different kinds of, because like I think I've talked about before kind of like what my you know, like I have a certain interest, a certain type of interest. If I don't, especially if I don't know a person, if I'm just like looking and I just see somebody across the club or something, or something like that. I have certain things that I do find attractive, just to see, um, like um, definitely that androgyny. I like that a lot. Um, but I don't really care if a person's androgynous if they're like androgynous looking. Like if I get to know them and I really like their personality, then I don't really necessarily it doesn't like I don't have like if I'm dating someone or like crushing on someone, they don't have to look like that necessarily, but if I don't know them, I don't know anything. If it's just like pure fantasy based, then like yeah, like definitely like I'd say I'm definitely interested more in the androgynous types until I kind of have like a personality to attach to a person. Like if it's going to be more than just like the physical appearance, then yeah. But yeah, that is kind of my type, but yeah, you don't really see that much out there. And if you do, it's usually um there's like a I think it's Thailand or I don't know if it's Taiwanese or Thai from Thailand. It might be both, honestly. But I feel like there's like when if you just search like tomboy, you find a lot of like Asian actors, um, like Asian women, born women, that look maybe more androgynous, but they're not necessarily trans. Um, I I don't know. I don't know too much about that culture, honestly. And I've been interested to look into it because I know that there's that Kathui culture. Um, Thai culture has the Kathui culture, um, which is like technically like I guess in quotes you would say like lady boys. That's pretty. That's a common. Um, it's a part of the culture, but also I found it interesting that I didn't know what to think about. Like I heard about it in a human sexuality class in grad school where one of my friends did a presentation on Cathuis. And I didn't know anything about this, and that's how I learned. And we all just had to pick a sexual topic that we would present. And so I presented on this book called like I don't know how to really pronounce this, but it's called like the Ananga Ranga. That's what it sounds like. Ananga, and then the second word Ranga. Um, and I believe it's from India. So it's not the Kama Sutra, but it's a book that's more verbal based, I guess, on like explanations about like how it's mostly about how a guy can please his woman. It's kind of like a sexual manual sort of, but not like in detail. Like it's kind of outdated a little bit too, but it is very there's a lot of accuracy to it as well, I would say. And I think it's translated into English. I think you can get like a PDF on the internet just for free. Like it's I think I found it in my like university library, and then I bought this like book. They had like pictures. It was like a combination of like the Kama Sutra and Ananga Ranga book, like all kind of like in one like manual, and it had these visuals. So that was part of my presentation because I was like, well, I want the book anyways, and I brought it. I remember taking that book, the Ananga Ranga book, some other couple sexuality books from my sexuality class, and I just, I would go like back and forth to like my family's house on the weekends. I remember leaving them on the kitchen table. Like it wasn't uncommon. I would come home, put my backpack on the kitchen chair or something, and just like put my books on the table. We studied at the kitchen table like a lot, and so I would just put my books there. And I remember once like either my sister or my mom or like both of them like looking through the books, and they were kind of like giggling a little bit, and I was like, wow, like okay. But I don't know if I like purposely left it out or if I just left it there because I was like trying to like test like because I grew up in a pretty repressed household where it was like people weren't talking about this stuff. But it was like, I knew I wasn't going to get in trouble because it was for school. So it was like, I'm not going to get in trouble. I just have to do a presentation. Like, nobody was going to be like, oh, this is wrong. This is evil. Like, whatever. Like, but I remember I did choose a topic that was like safe because I was like, it might be kind of embarrassing to kind of talk about any other kind of like an issue or any kind of like other sexual topic. And I remember having a really hard time finding a topic to discuss because I was like, okay, I don't want to talk about something that I'm actually into because that might like out me in a lot of ways. Because like, you don't want to be talking about like your own like personal sexual fantasies in the middle of your freaking class. Like, and I didn't really trust everybody in that class, even though it was a small class. But like, I was like, I don't really know you guys like that. Like, I'm not trying to be on that level. And I remember writing a paper, and this was grad school, so a lot of times my papers were 20, 30 pages. And like, there was no page limit, but I would always know that if we had a paper due, I would always shoot for about 20 pages. Because I was like, okay, that shows that I did a lot of work. If I write a paper that's like 6, 7 pages, that might already get me a worse grade just because they think that I can expand and write more. And I usually could. Like, if I was putting so much effort into it, I could usually write a 20-page paper. And so, that paper, I shot for it to be like 20 pages. And I just wrote the whole thing as much as I wanted. And we had prompts every week where we had to like write. And then we would just write about whatever the topic was, about our own personal lives, and we would turn them in to the TA who was in our cohort, which was awkward, too. But it was like, we didn't really talk about, like, we talked about sexuality and a little bit about our personal lives, but that class, the hard thing for me was that I didn't want to out myself. Like, I was kind of like, I knew kind of something was up, but I didn't know what the words were. But the more independent I got, I kind of started noticing how my interest in people were developing. Because mind you, I wasn't even necessarily allowed to be dating, even when I was like in my early college ages, just because I was still living at the house with my family in my early 20s and stuff, and like I still wasn't like allowed to necessarily date. And so, I mean, I could go like out on dates and stuff, but like, like, my parents were more like interested in me like studying and stuff, and so I just, was never like encouraged. It was more like slightly discouraged to be dating. And so I just kind of never really ventured out into dating too much, even though, like, I don't think I really started going out on dates that weren't just like groups of friends and stuff until I was in like grad school, honestly. And then, those, that was a good time. But, yeah, I remember in that presentation about the Ananga Ranga book that I was, kind of struggling with, not wanting to talk too much towards my own sexuality. So I was like, well, this is a safe topic because it's like an ancient cultural manual. So I just talked about it like I would any other like psychological or like archaeological or anthropological type of topic that we would discuss. And I did the presentation about the history of it and like different populations and groups. But I remember at the very end, I don't know what I was trying to say, but I remember, cause this professor, I believe he was Taoist, and I can't remember for sure, but I think he was, and he, or at least knew a lot about the culture, and he taught us a lot about like dualism and things like that. And so I remember like one of the last slides saying something about like LGBT people and then like dualism or something. I can't remember what I was trying to get at with like saying that like this book can be used by LGBT people too. But I don't know how I worded it. I think I tried to throw a term in there, like dualism or something. And I don't know, maybe I was writing it late at night, or maybe it was just like, how sometimes you like save or you just don't save and you think that you're done and then you just like go present it and you're like, oh shoot, that's an error. And I can't remember where I was going with it. But I do remember that he was like, yeah, that's incorrect, like the dualism thing. I was like, yeah, I think that slide, I didn't mean to put it in like that, and I can't remember what I was trying to say, but I remember specifically throwing in like an LGBT topic. That's the first time I ever put something in a presentation that it was like LGBT representation of some form, but I didn't know like how to word it or how to say it or where I was going with it. And just for it to show up as like a mistake in the middle of a presentation, I was like, and it was like my last slide, I think too, or like second to last slide or something. Like it was at the very, very end. And so, I was, that was probably one of my early experiences with like trying to kind of like, you know, delve into the culture. Like I had some gay friends then, but I would hear them talk about their dating and stuff like that, and I would just sit quiet and just like listen. And I was like, there was something comforting in just like being around them. We would hang out late in the labs and stuff, and like study and talk and different things. And I was like really very comfortable with them, and I couldn't tell why. Like, because at that time I wasn't like out, I wasn't like identifying as gay or anything. I just remember um, being super comfortable around these people. We're still in touch today, but I remember just having this kind of feeling, not like a crush, but like I really wanted to I really respected them. I wanted to be close to them. I wanted to have like a connection with them. I wanted them to like me. And I was learning a lot from them, but it was kind of like a sensitive topic where I just didn't like to respond to them. I got kind of nervous. Like I would get like nervous and stuff, and like it wasn't like a crush though. It was almost like, when you're like younger and you kind of have like someone you look up to that's older, like either like an older sibling or an older cousin or like a neighbor or like somebody that's around you that's like a little older and more experienced in a lot of things, and you're like, man, I like the way they dress and they're so cool, and like I like the way they are and like the hobbies they have, and you start like getting interested in their life because you can like identify it with something about them where you feel like you want to kind of be like connected with them. So it was kind of one of those kind of connections, like a maturity thing. Like there was something about their maturity level with their sexuality that I admired that, and especially because they were like LGBT people, and they weren't like overtly. That's another thing that I feel. Sorry, I'm kind of throwing in my own personal experiences as well as just talking about the topic, but I do feel like something I notice in my life, anyways, is that in the media, LGBT culture is like quite sexualized. Just like straight culture is too. It's very sexualized. What I mean is that, there's always a sex scene or a make out scene or something in a movie or whatever, right? Somebody's always going to make out or like feel somebody up, or they're going to have a crush, or there's going to be, it can even be like Terminator, or like I don't even know if Terminator had any like romance scenes or anything, but it doesn't even have to be a romance themed movie, and they just throw it in just because it's like people like that. People like that kind of, they like the action, they like explosions, they like sex scenes, they like those types of topics, and so that kind of gets views. So if you have like all these like hot people as actors, and then there happens to be a sex scene, they think that's going to kind of draw the audience a little more, even though a lot of times I have noticed that it's just so like forced. It's like, really, we're in the middle of like Terminator, you had to like put a random sex scene, or like we're in the middle of Fast and the Furious, and now everybody's like hooking up. Like, what's going on? Like, let's get back to the cars. Like, like you can tell sometimes they just like throw it in the story. And I'm not saying like anything bad necessarily. I'm not saying like there's anything wrong with like sexualizing the stories, but sometimes it's like you can tell they're just putting it in there as an extra like part of the theme for like the entertainment factor to like get viewers and stuff. But I do find that a little bit deceiving because, at least in my life, what I kind of notice sometimes is that the straight people see that and they kind of focus on these like sexual themes that they see in like LGBT content, or movies, especially if it's like Hollywood style stuff. And it's like, my life is not like the freaking L word. Most of us don't live like that. We're mostly not like that, everybody, some people are, some people aren't. Some people do have a lot of sex and they're part of like a hookup culture, and they enjoy that, and that's how they like to do things. I'm not shaming it. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but I'm just saying that it's portrayed in the media like that. Like everybody wants to hook up. Like every guy, wants to be on like an app to hook up with other guys and is going to just try to do that. I mean, I know plenty of gay guys that want committed relationships and kids and a family, and they're monogamous and they don't hook up with other guys, and they're not like trying to just like hook up with a bunch of guys. Or some guys who they feel like that was like a phase when they were like younger, and then like they don't do it anymore. Some of the guys I talked to, they were saying that. And then I've known other guys who they just totally hook up, and they're on Grindr or other apps, and or they just go out live and like hook up with people, and that's fine too. I mean, I think it's all fine, but I feel like in the media you don't really see that there is a range of types of people. And the same with like females. Like I was watching, I don't know if it's the most recent episode of What's the Safe Word. What's like Watts, like WATTS. But What's the Safe Word is this YouTube channel about kind of like about kink culture, and it's LGBT, and it's these two guys, and they, well, you can watch them if you want, and you can figure out what their partnership kind of consists of. But they basically talk about different educational topics related to kink culture, BDSM, different things like that. Or they talk about like LGBT culture too, and like different terminologies, different types of ways to buy stuff, different like qualities of different materials, all sorts of stuff. And so he was reviewing I think they were reviewing TikToks about like kink TikToks or something. And there was one that was like super funny that was by Sarah Shower. Let me see. I wrote it down. Sarah Shower. Sarah Sarah, last name Schauer. Like her video was really funny on TikTok, and it was like she was basically making a joke, but talking about like, why isn't there a Grindr for women, where it's like, because sometimes women just want to hook up too, and it's like, it's kind of assumed that, guys hook up, women don't hook up, things like that. So yeah, it's just kind of interesting. Another thing that I found interesting, and it might have just left me, I hope it didn't. Well, I think it just left me. But it's something about kind of along those lines of like hookup culture. Oh yeah. So I recently went to an event in my local town where I live, in Old City, and it had some of the DJs from LA. They do this in LA a lot, and I'm not in LA right now, but they do these types of events in LA a lot, because, we all know that there aren't really lesbian bars hardly anywhere. San Diego has one. I don't think Vegas has one. I don't think LA has one. I don't think, anywhere other than like San Francisco, and that's not necessarily a drivable distance. That's like an an 8 to 10 hour drive from Southern California, just to get to some like lesbian bars outside of San Diego. So there aren't that many. And then countrywide there aren't that many, and then worldwide there aren't that many. But in LA, and I don't know if they're the first place to do this. Maybe New York was, but in LA they do throw like parties, like girl parties, women parties, and it's for females to go and meet other females. So there's not really guys there. And I feel like I've been to another event like that, but I can't recall what it was. But this event I went to, it wasn't in LA, and it wasn't a ladies' night at the gay club. It wasn't that scene, because usually there's like gay guys there too. And it wasn't the lesbian bar, because the lesbian bar usually has gay guys there too, and all sorts of people there, but usually it's like primarily women, and then primarily LGBT women, but it has other people there too. And then so this party had really good music. The DJ was really good, but I just did notice a weird dynamic, and it was just my own perspective, right? So first of all, it was early. To me, it was early. It was like, I don't even think it was 9 o'clock. Maybe it was, nah. Maybe it was, I don't know. I feel like it was like 8:30 when I got there. And then, because I think it started at like 8. So I think I got there at like 8:30. That was already part of the problem, because, people aren't really liquored up. People aren't really loose, or people aren't really like warmed up. There wasn't like a huge crowd, but like people were friendly. There were some friendlier people there. So I was glad to go. I went with a couple of my friends. They're a couple. And then, one of my friends who kind of like knows everybody, because she's like part of this local scene, and just like very involved and volunteers in the community and stuff. Like, she knows a lot of people. So, she introduced to one of the DJs, and like, the one that does like the ladies' nights at the gay bar on Sunday nights, and because they changed it from like Thursday to like Sunday now. And then she was DJing, and then this other DJ that I really like, a Latina DJ, Les Ortiz, was there, who DJs in LA quite often. And so I've seen about the events in LA, and it seems like, they've got like go-go dancers now, mask and femme ones, and then they've got like nights where you can just go see the go-go's, and then nights where you're there just with the DJs. But this event was just supposed to be like a club feel, but like a women's club feel. And it was just odd. Like, there were some things that I feel like they were trying to do that were like, this isn't really too appealing or to what people are trying to do. Now, one thing I would say is the music was on point. So that was very interesting, that the music was very like high quality DJ, music. But there was a dance floor. People weren't really on the dance floor. So there was a band when we first walked in. It was like a cover band, a female cover band. And they were on the stage. So there's a stage. There's a dance floor right in front of the stage. To the sides of the dance floor, which is the left and right side of the stage, lining that wall, there are little like booths. But then the back part of the stage, the back part of the dance floor, that area there is, there's like it's like a standing bar. So it's just like a little table, like a table, a thin kind of table where you can just like put your drinks but stand. And then there's like a gap where you can like walk back and forth. And then there's like the actual bar that had, I can't remember if it had stools. I think it was just a a bar where you could stand and the bartender. And then there's like a window, and then there's an outdoor patio with a bar just on the other side of that window. And then there's like a bunch of seating outside and like, the balcony and everything because it's upstairs. So to get in, you just go upstairs. And so it was a good setting. It was a good, the lighting was good. The music was good. The drinks were cheap. Admission was relatively high. I feel like it was like $14.99 or something. I can't remember, but you had to get tickets in advance. I don't think it was buy tickets at the door. You could get on a list, and like it was like a female event. Like there were women at the door that were like taking tickets and letting people in and all this stuff. And then there were the people that were attending the bar. They were all women. They had go-go dancers too that did like a routine, and it was kind of more like a strip routine, like a strip, like when you go see like dancers and there's like strippers, dancers. There weren't like poles from what I recall, but they were wearing like black, kind of like a black lingerie, but it was kind of like a swimsuit style, and then just had kind of like some different kind of like accessories like on their legs or like on their arms. So they did their routine, and then they were kind of like interacting with the crowd because like again nobody was dancing. And they interacted with the crowd by coming up to people and taking them out little by little to the dance floor and like dancing with them and stuff. And I just thought that was a little weird. But it wasn't like uncomfortable because I was there with friends, but I just felt like it was a little I feel like, I don't know, like that wasn't really my flavor. Like first of all, there weren't like a whole lot of minorities. The DJs were, the dancers were, but otherwise there weren't a whole lot of minorities. There were some, and I spotted like the token few of us. So there weren't a lot of ethnic minorities. A lot of people weren't dancing. People came with friends. Nobody was really mingling, talking to different people. I think there was like this like shyness. And then kind of a lack of assertiveness too. Like a lot of the females weren't like assertive. But then again, this was still early on and I didn't stay late. So I don't really even know like if it got different like afterwards. But I just found it to be an interesting event because, I just found it to be interesting because like it didn't seem like pumped up too much, even though it was good. It just felt like I think everyone was like feeling out the environment and was like, this is new to all of us. And it wasn't like our normal, local gay club, that has a familiar feel. So when you go there, you usually recognize the dancers, you recognize the DJs, you recognize the bar, you recognize the waiters, and you kind of just like, you just feel like at home there. And I think it does have a sign that says like welcome home or something like that. You just kind of do feel like, yeah, this is like my regular bar. But I do prefer like dance floors that aren't like well lit. That's the one thing I don't really like too much about the lesbian bar compared to like the gay guy bar, is that like it's like so brightly lit, and like I prefer like I like the lights and like all that kind of stuff, like the lights, like the colorful lights and all that kind of stuff, like the all those like LED colors and all this kind of stuff. So that's just my preference. But I kind of like a light show and everything. And then I did find it a little awkward. Just because I feel like everyone felt it was awkward. Like I saw some people that I was like, oh, they're kind of cute, and it was 21 and up, so it's like everybody here is at least of a certain age range where you don't have to like really worry, even though I mean, 21 might be young for me, but just for someone to have fun with for like the day, like that's cool. Like, I don't know. I'm not too much of an ageist though, honestly. I think the only reason why age bothers me, either quite younger or quite older, honestly, it's because I don't think I would want other people to be like, oh, like you're dating somebody who's like really that young, or like you're dating somebody who's that old. Like I feel like just the judgment around it would be like a little hard for me. But I don't really feel like I couldn't be into somebody, and I don't really think the maturity levels always really equal the age. Like, I've known people who are far older than me that are far less mature, and I've known people who are far younger than me that, they're quite mature people. So I couldn't really say, but um, yeah, I really like um I really like when they try to do new events, but like I'm just trying to think about like if I had never been to any other queer events of any kind and that was my first one, that would be awkward. But also, I feel like that space brought a lot of different types of people that I don't really see at the usual clubs where I usually go. Like, I don't really see a lot of masculine presenting females out and about, and I feel like they were really comfortable going there. I saw quite a lot of them there, and so that to me was like cool because I was like, hell yeah, like you don't really see that around here too much, even though I know they exist. Because when Pride comes around, they all come out, and I'm like, where have you been all year? Like, where were you? Where was everybody? Like stop hiding and come out. And like, but yeah, I noticed that, especially like younger people. Like I do see like older like mask presenting females um like older ages, but I don't really see a lot of people that look like they're in their 20s and 30s just kind of out there like that. Um, and then, um, yeah. So yeah, I don't really know if there's, um, too much extra that I can really say on this matter. Other than my own personal experiences, and I do want to talk about my own personal experiences more. Um, so I'm maybe just gonna shut this off and maybe make a part two because this is almost 90 minutes. I'm sorry, but thanks for listening.